fact that food grows on trees in Southern California. So please welcome Erika Kerekes. And Erika, if you were food, what would you be and why?
Right, this is a tough one. Kind of wish we had a little advanced planning on this. If I were food, I would be a beautiful loaf of home-baked bread. Because the smell makes everyone happy. It's always nice. The taste makes everyone happy. You pretty much can't walk into a room where bread has been baked and not feel better. So, and if you leave it alone for too long, it gets stale. Bread needs taken care of. I think I'm the only person up here, and thank you very much for including me. I'm the only person up here who's not actually in the food business and not in the entertainment business. I'm a marketing consultant, which means when I talk to people, I usually have slides behind me. I'm really good at talking with slides. So I actually wrote something that I was going to read to you, and now I've decided I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to wing it here. Yeah, the truffle thing is a total accident. I am so jealous of Honey and of Darrow, where you know, your parents actually and your grandparents, you grow up in their kitchens learning how to cook and smelling. Yeah, I didn't have that. My mother makes excellent reservations. The LA food bloggers, there's a group called Food Bloggers Los Angeles that meets once a month, and we have a themed potluck every month where we get together and we cook for each other, and then we write about each other's foods, kind of a publicity thing. And we had a potluck where the theme was to cook your heritage. And I brought a bowl of still partially frozen vegetable medley, because that's what I grew up on. So the truffle thing was a total accident. People ask me, like, where did you learn to cook? I learned to cook from PBS and the very first days of the Food Network, because I was living in New York and I was single and I really liked to eat, and I had this tiny, teeny kitchen that I think was smaller than these two chairs put together, and that's where I learned to cook. I actually had never baked anything in my entire life until after college, when one of my friends who did grow up in a house where people cooked and baked, she bought me very important things. She bought me a springform pan, she bought me a cooling rack, and she bought me a whisk. I didn't have a whisk. I didn't have anything. So my grandmother actually cooked a little. The story goes that my grandfather, before they got married, my grandfather's mother was an excellent cook. Polish, Lower East Side, you know, made all the traditional things. My grandmother came from a family, so my great, let me just think about this, my great-great-grandparents had run a bakery in Russia. Apparently none of those skills got passed down. Excuse me. My great-grandmother, who came to Russia after possibly running a whorehouse in Smolensk, which is 100 miles west of Moscow, we're not totally sure, it's the story we hear. She came and she had 5 kids on the Lower East Side, and she wanted nothing to do with any of it. She didn't cook, she didn't clean, she went and spat in the Yiddish theater all day, and my grandmother and her sisters and brothers kind of had to fend for themselves. So my grandmother was an opera singer, and she went to Curtis, and she was going to be a professional opera singer, and then she met my grandfather, and they decided to get married. She stopped singing, huge tragedy. So when they were about to get married, my grandfather's mother realized that her son was not going to get fed because my grandmother didn't know how to cook. So she taught her how to make like 5 things. Stuffed cabbage, the sweet and sour kind with the raisins, which I can't make. I'll tell you why in a minute. She made, I think this was a 50s thing, she made the broiled grapefruit with the sugar on top. I remember her doing that. She made matzo ball soup, and we loved her matzo ball soup. We would go every Friday to my grandparents' house, not because it was Shabbos, but because it was close to where we had our piano lessons on Friday nights. So after the piano lessons, we would go to Grandma and Grandpa's house, and we would have matzo ball soup. I was a grown-up before I found out that her matzo balls came from a mix, and the soup was Lipton's. So I don't have good family food history. I had to make my own family food history, and you know, you can ask my son who's there. I think we're doing a good job of creating our own family food history, but we did not come by it easily. So the truffle thing. So this is 2009. I had just started writing my food blog, and I had met a company in San Diego. Can you guys hear me without this?
Yes.
Can I put this down? Is that okay? We're not recording with this or anything, right? Sorry, I just feel like I'm echoing, and I have a pretty loud voice, so I'm okay. So I had met this company called Specialty Produce in San Diego. It's a gourmet wholesaler, and I went down to take a tour of their place. And we're walking around, and there are all these like microgreens and 17 kinds of potatoes, and then we stop in front of this, I kid you not, like a 20-foot wall of truffle products. Fresh truffles and truffle oil and truffle cream and all this stuff. And I think I stood there a little too long, and possibly, you know, saliva was coming out of my mouth. And so the woman who was taking me around got the idea that I liked truffles. I don't even know why I liked truffles. I honestly think that at that point I had never tasted a truffle. I was trying to remember as I was writing this, what was my first truffle experience? I have no idea. It could have been, I went to Paris with my parents in the early 90s. We went to this amazing restaurant called Le Carton, which is not in existence anymore, but it had 3 stars and cost, I think our lunch cost something like the cost of a used Mercedes. And I think there might have been truffle in one, but I'm not sure. I don't remember it that clearly. It's not like, I remember the first time I tasted blue cheese. I was 8. We were at a restaurant in Montauk. It was winter in Montauk, overlooking this angry ocean, and they bring me this iceberg salad, and it's got blue cheese dressing. I don't know why. And I taste it, and I literally remember the words echoing in my head. I cannot live without this. I have no truffle memories like that. So I really don't know why I was so obsessed with the wall of truffles. But a month later, Kelly from Specialty Produce tweets at me actually, and she says, I can get you a pound of black Italian summer truffles at cost. Do you want them? And I said, yes! And then I thought, what am I going to do with a pound of truffles? So I called my husband. I was at work. I called my husband. And I said, we're getting a pound of truffles. And he said, so what would a normal person say when you did that, right? Are you crazy? What are you talking about? Huh? He said, who's on the list? Because to him, a pound of truffles meant we're having a party. So that was a Tuesday. On Wednesday, which is the day that the driver from Specialty Produce comes up, goes to the farmer's market, goes to the wholesale market, I'm sitting at 6 a.m. in the parking lot of the Carl's Jr. at the La Cienega exit right north of the 10, so you get off the 10. Carl's Jr. 6 in the morning, it's one of those foggy June gloom, July days, and I'm sitting there thinking, I am tired, I smell, I have morning breath, I want coffee, but I gotta stay here, because he's coming. I'm sitting there in my soccer mom minivan, and this dented blue, really filthy blue Chevy pickup pulls up next to me, and we're like, he pulls up this way, and we're window to window. And I roll my window down, he rolls his window down, he looks at me, and I hand him an envelope with cash, and he hands me a cardboard box. And he puts up his window and he drives away. No words. No words. So I'm sitting there with this box, and I can smell it. I can smell it, I can feel, every pore, like the upholstery in my Honda is starting to absorb the smell already, I can feel it. And it's, 6:15 in the morning, and the kids are going to be up, they were littler then, and they were going to be up and running around, and I needed to get home, and all I could do was sit there in the car and smell the truffles. So, we had a party. And it's amazing when you call people on a Wednesday and say, hey, we're having this party, it's all truffles on Saturday. They're like, oh yeah, we're free. We are free. So a lot of people changed their plans. The first year we had about 40 people. I made, mostly friends and family. I made 9 different truffle dishes. I remember making these little canapes with ricotta cheese and honey and grated truffles and fresh thyme. That was really delicious. I think I tried to make this corn pudding. Did not work because I was stupid and I quadrupled the recipe because we were having a lot of people. And no, I have some, thank you. I just didn't want to stop too. But I did it in a really big pot, and it wasn't a shallow pan, and so it didn't cook, didn't set in the middle. It tasted really good. It looked a little like throw up, but it tasted really good. So that was really, I made truffle honey ice cream, fresh ice cream laced with truffle honey. It was delicious. So I was hooked. I made friends with the dealer who had supplied the gourmet wholesaler. I had lunch with him in Santa Monica. He wanted to know, so he put his card in the box because he wanted to know what kind of crazy non-professional buys a pound of truffles. Who is this person? So I call him up, we meet for lunch. After lunch, I go out to his car. It's got a little hatchback. He opens the hatchback, and I literally almost fell over because his whole trunk is full of truffle stuff. And I swear to God, I've never come so close to carjacking something as I did at that moment. So the second year, it grew to about 75 people, and I made, I think, 12 dishes. Thank you. You remember. I made 12 different dishes. The second year, I wrote them down. So the really interesting things the second year were, I think I did those filet mignon open-faced sandwiches, right? Which was my husband grilled filet mignon, and the whole time I kept saying to him, "Don't overdo it. Don't make it too. You're gonna overdo it." Erika, shut up and let me cook the steak. And of course, it was perfect.
What did you put on top?
So everything, all dishes have grated truffles. So this is the interesting thing about summer truffles. They're not as strong as the very expensive winter truffles. And by the way, the reason I have this party in the summer is that summer truffles are only retail for about $400 a pound, whereas the winter ones are like $3,000 a pound. I can't afford to do this party in the winter. So I'm crazy when it comes to this party. I made truffle butter. I didn't buy the little tubs of it. I made truffle butter, and I went and got cream and made butter and mixed in the truffles and mixed in some truffle salt. So the filet mignon sandwiches are just a piece of baguette, a fairly generous layer of truffle butter, a nice kind of room temperature slice of rare filet mignon, a sprinkling of truffle salt, and a grating of fresh truffles. And so the thing about truffles is that really the simpler you keep the base, the better the whole thing is. Truffles like white, creamy, starchy things, and they like beef. So I would do things like egg salad, or I did macaroni and cheese one year, I did rice pudding one year. So the second year, 75 people, 12 dishes. At that point, I had a lot of food blogger friends, so a lot of the food bloggers came and they took pictures and they wrote about it and started growing. So then the third year was like 120 people, and I made 16 different dishes because I just kept finding ways to use them. And the third year, the coverage started getting bigger. I got written up in LA Weekly. LA Weekly never writes about private parties, but they basically wrote a story saying, "We never write about private parties, but." I went on to Evan Kleiman's show, Good Food, and talked about truffles on the show, which was really fun. I actually brought her, I was recipe testing at the time, so I brought for her and Harriet, her producer then, I was testing this fish mousse. It was like kind of like a play on brandade. And I was testing what kind of fish to use. So I had 3 different kinds of fish. I brought 3 little tubs, and I brought 3 little cucumber cups that I hollowed out the little pieces of cucumber. And right there in the studio, I filled the cucumber cups with the different, and she tasted it. She's like, "Oh, well, that's white fish." "They're all white. How do you know?" She's like, and that's rock. Like, she knew exactly what every fish was. And we all liked different things. I think I had whitefish, cod, and Pacific rockfish. And I said, "Which one should I use?" And she said, "Honestly, they're all good. I'd use whichever's cheapest." And that's exactly what I did. So that was the third year. So I got all this coverage the third year. And then last year, which was the 4th Trufflepalooza, things got a little out of hand. Totally my fault. So for one thing, I am very bad at saying no. I really do believe in kind of the open house philosophy. When I give a party, of course I want you there. Doesn't matter if I don't know who you are, right? If you want to come to my party, sure, come on, this is a big deal. So I couldn't say no, and people kept asking me if they could come, and I was just like, sure. You're bringing, yeah, fine, whatever, it doesn't matter. 100, 120, 150. Well, I've discovered that the capacity of my house is less than what I had last year. It was very crowded, and so I think, I don't know exactly because there was no list. I think we had about 200 people. I know I made at least 300 pieces and some more of different dishes, and I did 20 different dishes. And I went totally, completely nuts. I made, well, a friend and I made 500 handmade little corn tortillas for the tacos that I did with Pacific rockfish, which had a truffled slaw, and then short ribs, braised short ribs, which had a truffled aioli and pickled shallots. So 500 little tacos. Think about how long that takes. I made homemade duck confit with a truffled sauce in these little crepe pouches. And if you want to see a picture of it, Elisa actually has a picture of it on her phone from last year.
I don't know if I have truffles.
Right. So I made, 300 or 400 crepes about this size. Think about how long that takes. I made a gallon of truffle butter. There's a picture of that on Elisa's phone too. We were looking at the pictures just before this, and I was like, holy shit, that's how much butter I made, and we used every single bit. It was like this big, the tub of butter, so think about how much cream that takes. My mother, this was the first year she came to Trufflepalooza, and my mother, as I explained, not a cook, she sat there. Has anybody ever done a Hasselback potato? So you know the potatoes where you cut it almost all the way through like this, and then when you bake it, it kind of opens up a little bit. Well, we used mini potatoes, and she sat there and Hasselback cut like 300 or 400 potatoes, and she still loves me. That's the important part. So it was totally out of hand. The LA Times actually did a feature on it in the food section. It ran the day of the party. I was on such a high, and then the party came, and truthfully, I did not have a very good time. My house is big, but it's not that big. My kitchen is big, but it's not that big. 20 dishes for 200 people was too much. So now, I run into people and they say, I can't believe I missed Trufflepalooza last year. I'm going to plan my summer around it. And I get this twinge of guilt because on the one hand, I love throwing parties and I love feeding people, And on the other hand, I don't know how I'm going to do this party again. I don't know how I'm going to do it and not have people be disappointed because I do fewer dishes, or there are fewer people, or maybe it's not as good. I'm still trying to figure out, but I have to figure it out because it's May and Trufflepalooza's in July. And any of you who want to come are invited.